Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome. It's so good to see you all. On behalf of the First Five Commission, I'd like to welcome you all to the Marin Communications Forum on Emergency Preparedness. My name is Eric Lucan. I have the privilege of serving on the First Five Commission. And I also want to just briefly introduce some of our amazing staff, some of my colleagues on the board. We've got Michelle Fideli in the back there, our amazing communications and policy manager. Help put all of this together. I don't see Maria yet, but we have an amazing new executive director, Maria Nigel, and she's not here right now, but I'm sure she'll be popping in here. And if you get a chance, if you haven't met her yet, please go up, say hi. She's doing a phenomenal job in just her first few months. She got us through our audit in her second month on the job, so she's doing great. Also want to recognize my fellow commissioner, Carrie Berman, with Marin County Health and Human Services. And we've got a great forum planned for you this morning. Now you might be wondering, or you might be asking, what is the connection? What is the nexus between First Five and kids 0 to 5 and emergency preparedness? And I was thinking about this a little bit, and in addition to being a First Five commissioner, I'm also a parent of 2 kids under the age of 5. And whether you know it or not, parents of kids age 0 to 5, or if you've had kids age 0 to 5, you are already uniquely prepared for any emergency that life might throw your way. I mean, just think about, how many of you have kids under the age of 5? How many of you have had kids under the age of 5 at one point or another? All right, so think back to that time. Think about all of the work involved just in leaving the house, right? I mean, you have to be prepared for everything. You've got to have the diaper, then you've got to have the backup diaper, then you need the emergency diaper, then you need the extreme emergency diaper, then you've got wipes, and you've got snacks, and you've got milk, and you've got water, and you've got Band-Aids and first aid kits, and you've got to get them clothed. You got both socks on, both shoes on. I mean, it is emergency preparedness almost every single day when you've got young kids. And so whether you know it or not, you are already uniquely prepared for anything that life's going to throw your way. And if you're a parent of young kids, your vehicle, whether you know it or not, is probably an emergency response vehicle, because you have diapers and wipes and first aid kits in every single compartment and in the glove box. You are prepared for anything. So we are already there. We are already one step ahead. And when it comes to coming together as a community, this is a good group. This is a great group that already has some of those building blocks. And we're going to learn a little bit more. We've got a lot of great speakers for you today, so that we could better prepare ourselves, better prepare our colleagues, take the information we learned today back to our organizations, back to the people that we work with. So with that, I am really pleased to introduce Stephen Torrance from the Marin County Office of Emergency Management to kick things off today. We have a great team at the county led by Stephen, a group of individuals that wake up every single day making sure that we are adequately prepared as a county for any emergency, for any disaster. They're out there in the community, educating the community, preparing the community, and we have a privilege of having them here today to tell us all the great things that they're working on and to educate us so we can learn together. So with that, give a hand to Stephen Torrance.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Good to see so many people in the audience. First and foremost, thank you, Supervisor Lucan. Thank you, First Five Marin, for having us this morning. This is a great opportunity for us in the County of Marin, the Office of Emergency Management. Before we continue, I do want to acknowledge, as Supervisor Lucan just alluded to, the new staff that we have here. So I know they're all at one table, but if the team from Office of Emergency Management could just raise your hand just for a second so people can get a chance to acknowledge you as well. So, all right. Well, thank you. We have a new team that is growing, and at the same time, we have an opportunity not only to make sure that we are working with the community, but this is an exciting time for us to be able to interact with new members of our community. It is important for us to be able to, focus on emergency management. But when we start looking at the various areas of emergency management, as you can see on the slides, disasters are about people. And that's kind of the mantra that we have within our office, where we want to make sure that we are taking the next step. We have the hazard assessments down. We know what to do in an emergency, but how do we ensure that everyone in this room, the members of the Marin community and the greater Bay Area, how can we collectively be resilient and recover from disasters? And it starts with preparedness. And so today we're going to kind of go over, we have a pretty wide range of speakers this morning, but want to make sure that we're starting off just kind of that call to action. So one of the things that we want to do is, of course, there's not many people in this room that I've had the personal privilege of being able to interact with. But what we'd like to do is be able to change that so everyone knows about our agency, what we can do, and also how can we use communication to better support the members of the community, not just the people in this room, but your neighbors. And so that's what I'm going to be focusing on today. We want to be able to ensure that we are speaking to diverse groups. We typically will find ourselves at a community event with our tables, and there's a running joke in emergency management right now that everyone goes and tables and everyone walks past our booth going, that's cool. And then they walk past and, it's nice, we're there. People see, but we want to make sure that we have those real interactions, those interactions that people can take back with them and actually have some change in their homes, change in their neighborhood. And so with that, being able to use communication in a different means to be able to say, how can we work with the members of our community to build capacity, not just for our household, but our entire block. And so with that, we want to be able to look at disasters in a different light to make sure that as we continue to build, that we are not just building at home, but we're building at work and at school as well. And when we start looking at these things, one of the big things is making sure that our parents, our families, our people with children who are dealing with chaos just in daily life, have the means to be able to take a moment to have that connection and communication with people as we continue to build. So I kind of want to start today. Oh, give me 1 second. So I want to start today with just highlighting communications. So it would be remiss upon me to not acknowledge that this is a Marin Communications Forum. And when we start looking at communications, I'll start with emergency response. How most of the time when we do after action reports, which is after the big emergency happens or the big event, we always want to know what went right and what went wrong. And 9 times out of 10, the first thing that someone says in the room is communications. They always look back and they say, we failed to communicate the right way. And when we start looking at these emergencies, this happens every single day in emergency management. It happens in law enforcement, fire, but it also happens in our communities. And so when we start looking at this, we can look at 9/11, when people started saying, what went wrong? Communications. Active shooters, active threat, what went wrong? Communications. And so when we start looking at it, people typically will look at this and go, well, should we just buy new radios? Should we just buy new equipment? No. The equipment and technology is consistently increasing, but it's the people on the other end and how they communicate with each other, how we can calm down the chaos. And that's what we want to be able to look at today. How can we calm down the chaos in our daily lives to make sure that in the event that we have a no-noticed event or something that happens of immediate fire, how can we work with our neighbors to make sure that we know that we have daily chaos, but how can we use this to build our connections? So when we started looking at emergencies, a lot of public safety agencies had all of their equipment at home. They worked very well inside their homes. But there was a silo. There was a silo where a lot of agencies didn't talk, so police didn't always talk to fire. They didn't have the same channel or the same radio communication. And with that, you had a breakdown in communications between the neighboring jurisdictions or the neighboring departments in some situations. And so when we started looking at this, a lot of people recognized that the way that people communicate with each other is one of the most important things that we can do. And one of the things I want to say, there's a lot of people in this room, and I know that we have these communication forums, but we want to make sure that we take the information in this room to make sure that we're connecting with the next person. And so when we started seeing that historically, the Oakland Hills fire, when people started making these shifts and said, we're wasting resources in certain areas because we're failing to communicate. we're looking at all these chaotic situations. We want to be able to use different skills instead of telling people to go and buy stuff or stock up supplies, because we know not everyone can do those types of things. We saw that the fire departments, law enforcement agencies started utilizing a communication person-to-person training and saying, you know what, at this point, we ask that you start working with your fire department, start working with your law enforcement partners, and train together. And that way we can have better communication, collaboration. So when those chaotic situations happen, you know that person who you're going to be working with. You know the person and what their skill set is. And that has enhanced the way that public safety agencies have been able to respond to large-scale emergencies. And so now you have multiple people at the table. We want to take that same concept and bring it to emergency preparedness. How can we get our communities to start looking at, we know we have tons of chaos in our lives. How can we use communication to say, we know that we have a neighborhood that has 20 homes on it. Everyone has so much going on in their lives. How can we take that same concept and apply it to every home on that street? Getting neighbors to talk to neighbors. And so when we start looking at how the dispatchers and how fire departments have started working, we recognize that we can have all the technology, we can have all of the resources, but when we start realizing that if we don't focus on the people that are in the room, there is going to be a consistent breakdown. And so with that, how can we use the different skill sets that are existing in the community? So we started looking at the technology. How can we use that technology to better serve members of our various agencies? And we want to be able to do that today. And so how you'll hear from a couple of the speakers later on how we have that technology, but we want to make sure that as we have that technology, it is adequately shared with the members of the public, from not only from trusted sources, but from neighbors who can help support that. So when I think of chaos, I think of what is on the screen right now, just a bunch of squiggly lines going all over the place. They're not necessarily, it's with, you have a lot of stuff that's without purpose. To me, this is, the quintessential version of chaos. But with that, we understand that each one of these lines has some type of purpose to it. There's no process, there's no coordination. It's just a bunch of things doing random lines at the end of the day. And I know that's kind of how my brain works. It's one of those things where I try to think about emergencies and how can we find a sense of calm in these. And this is definitely not the essence of calm. This is what we have happen from time to time, and we want to get away from this. And so we talked about a family. I almost imagine that this is also chaos to a lot of people. This might not, I hope this is not your steering wheel. But this is actually what a lot of people are doing every single day. Just that sticky note reminder that I have to pick up the kids. I have to get the meds. I have to get to yoga. And then after yoga, I have to get my kid to soccer practice. I also have to make sure that there's a parent-teacher conference that's coming up. By the way, did I get the super duper bag diaper as well as the other two sizes of diapers? There's a lot of things that people are forced to remember. And that's just on a Monday. Now, if we take that and we say, hey, OEM, you just sent out an emergency alert that says you need to take action now, we've added a whole nother level of chaos to someone's life that was most likely overwhelming. And when we start looking at that, we want to be able to acknowledge, number one, yes, life, I don't know if this will translate well, I apologize. Life be lifin', that's what I like to say sometimes. It's a difficult moment where we start realizing that there's a lot of things that people can't change in their lives. They have to make sure that they can get to the doctor. They have to make sure that they can pick up their kids from school. And so when we have these moments, we have to recognize that there are a lot of things that we can continue to do, but when the emergency happens, there's a level of support that we can give to members of our community to really just take a moment to make sure that we're checking in on everyone. In the recent Marin Independent Journal article, there was 4 questions that we asked. And would your neighbor know to check on you if it was a hot day? Would you know to check on your neighbor in the event that there was an evacuation, or would they check on you? And when we start looking at these types of things, a lot of the times the answer is no. Unfortunately, we saw the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, does an annual survey of households in the United States. And in 2022, they said everyone is willing to prepare. Coming off of COVID, people were really good at preparedness. But what they also noticed at the same time is that the two lowest areas were when we started to realize that only 10% of people were willing to plan with their neighbor that year. 12% were willing to get involved. And a lot of these things are starting to see that post-COVID, people are in their silos. They're in their silos, they're really saying, I'm working from home, I really don't have to leave, I don't really need to talk to anyone, I talk to everyone in a little box now, so I'm safe. But when an emergency happens and you're forced to leave your home and interact with your neighbor, less and less people know how to prepare with their neighbor. There's less and less people that I recognize in my own building where I live, that I've seen people when I say hi and they kind of just walk away, and I'm just like, I'm not the weird guy, I just want to say hi. What's your name? That's about it. But more and more we're recognizing that 10% and that 12% of people that are willing to prepare with their neighbor and get involved will have a large impact on how we are able to get response, how we can get neighborhoods to recover quick. And so what we want to do is be able to use this as a moment to remind everyone here that you are involved. I would be safe to say that you are part of that 10 to 12% that are planning with your neighbor, that are involved with your community. How can we double that capacity in Marin County? How can we use the skill set that is here by just communicating with your neighbor to make sure that we can get someone to the next step? So when we start realizing how we can build this, a lot of the things that we can do are very simple. That first step of getting to know your neighbor, saying hello. When we start recognizing, a lot of times you'll hear in the pre-civil or civil defense era of emergency management where everything was about war and tactical boots and things of that like that, everything seemed very preppery, like where you had to have a ton of stuff, and people were like, that person's just a little weird. But right now we're starting to realize that what you can do is actually just say hi and have a barbecue. Have a picnic with your neighbor. Being able to just go out and say, hey, we're going to have a little come together at the local community center or just on our block, or just having a 4th of July event, Memorial Day event, where you're getting people out of their homes to connect with each other. Slowly breaking down those silos to make sure that as you start to get to know each other, that first step of learning someone's name will get them to the next portion. Was I actually will check on my neighbor if I know it's a hot day, because now I know they don't have air conditioning. Or I know that they have access, they need medication, but they have someone that comes and picks them up from time to time. Those simple steps of getting a chance to know your neighbor will allow for us to be more and more resilient in our communities. So as we get to this moment where we're really starting to work with our neighbors, we know that there's opportunities for the next steps of those conversations where people might start asking about, do you have access to your alert and warning? But that's down the road. This connection with your community will allow for you to bridge those conversations to the things that we're going to be talking about later on today. How do we bridge into, will you double check on me when I need to evacuate? Can I use your car because I actually don't have one? Or actually my phone, I don't know how to sign up for emergency alerts on my phone. What are some of the things that I can do? So using the skill set of communication to be able to say, I'm going to actually help you sign up for your alerts on your phone to make sure that you get them. There are certain things that we can do to be able to push information, but at the same time, we also need support to be able to have that neighbor-to-neighbor trusted communication between the members of our community. So how do we get away from this? How do we get away from that moment of chaos? Being able to recognize that each one of us has a purpose beyond just our individual silo. Working with so many other people to recognize that if we actually move away from this, that we can truly calm the chaos by using communication. That chaos that we start having throughout our community, we know, we've heard many people If I have to evacuate, I know the streets are going to be packed. I know everyone's going to be pulling out of our driveway. But if you know how your neighbor's plan is going to actually turn out, you might have an opportunity to know, actually, we can share a car. We can share a car, and we can make sure that there's an opportunity that there's less cars on the road because people are starting to plan ahead. They're planning with their neighbor. Or the next step of getting involved to make sure that there's opportunities for people to build capacity within their neighborhood. So instead of everyone panicking and trying to think of 100 things to do at one time, you've made the steps of communicating with your neighbor to know, I actually know how we're going to collectively respond. And that chaos has an opportunity to turn into something that's still a little chaotic. I'm not going to say that emergencies are going to be perfect, but if we can make chaos work seamlessly together, and we can actually work in a coordinated way, I think that'll be a way for us to move into the next phase of this, where we start talking about the different types of alerts, how you will evacuate, how you will move through your community. In the event that resources are needed, can we also start sharing resources? Because I can say that I have a Costco membership, but I don't have everything ready to go at all times. I can do the best that I can. So collectively pulling your resources, sharing the information that you have within your community is some of the best thing that we can do to ensure that not only are we able to respond to emergencies, but we're able to respond in a collective way. So with that, I will turn it over to my team and the rest of our speakers today to kind of highlight the information that I would like for you to share. I would like to be able to make sure that we're hearing how the communication moves throughout and all the different information that can be shared. So I'll be with you this morning, but before we move on, I do want to recognize Supervisor Rodoni, who's also here in the room this morning. Thank you for being here, and we thank you for your support. As an opportunity, Supervisor Lucan and Supervisor Rodoni both are starch advocates for this program and the transition that we have. And we hope that the changes that we have put in place not only are working for the members of the community, but the agencies that are also reflected here. We want to make sure that we're able to serve not only the members of the community that are always at our events, but the people who are not. And if you have any questions on how we can help support you in getting the message out to you and your neighbors and your households, feel free to reach out to our office. OEM@marincounty.org. Please reach out to us. So with that, I will turn it over to our next speaker, Mari Ochoa, who is our Public Information Officer for the Office of Emergency Management and the Fire Department. She has a large role. And so with that, I will turn it over to the next speaker, and thank you for being with us this morning.
Good morning, everyone. I am just going to repeat that we have an interpreter over in the corner. Para aquellos que prefieren escuchar esta información en español, tenemos un intérprete atrás si gustan recibir algún aparato que le pueda apoyar en la traducción. So, my name is Marimar Ochoa. I am the Public Information Officer for Marin County Fire and Office of Emergency Management. Pretty boring, it sounds. So what I focus on is communications during an emergency, ahead, preparedness, response, recovery. But what I'm here to focus on today is equitable communications. And equitable communications includes a lot of different layers. We could talk about language access, AFN, supporting our community with disabilities, and so much more. And this is truly something that continues to change and grow as we see our incredible community partners advocate for the community that they support, the communities that historically have been underserved and underrepresented in government, but that shift is coming and it continues to grow. So equitable communications during an emergency, what we really need to make sure is that we're reaching everyone in a clear, concise manner. And so what I'm going to do right now is a little exercise just to explain what some people may feel during an emergency. So if you could all follow the instructions I provide as best you can, use whatever resources you have to be able to follow this direction. So, para este ejercicio voy a ofrecer la información en español para aquellos que me entienden, si por favor se pueden parar de su asiento. Ahora les voy a pedir que toquen su nariz, pongan sus manos en la cadera, y a sentarse otra vez. Muchas gracias. What I did right now was show a percentage of the population in here understand instruction. And in an emergency, this is the perfect example of language access. About half of the room was able to follow those instructions. Some of you might have followed your neighbor to your left or to your right. And what we see there is a delay in response. And in an emergency, that delay can mean everything. And so truly having language access during an emergency is one of the priorities, if not the top priority, within communications during any incident or hazard that occurs. And so that is touching on our language access on all of the communities. We, of course, have communities that don't speak that speak other languages other than English and Spanish. And we work with our incredible community partners to support us in the response. I see a lot of familiar faces here from all of my favorite nonprofit lead agencies. If you haven't heard of the community response teams, they're incredible and they support an emergency response during any incident. And with that partnership, we're also able to work with the leaders within the communities that can help us translate. Sometimes the translation isn't immediate, and as I just pointed out, it's necessary for it to be immediate. So I'm going to go through, I'm just going to show you a quick video, hopefully. Maybe not. Here we go. Here are a couple of the tools that we have at our disposal in the Office of Emergency Management to communicate with everyone in the public. And this is just some of the resources that we've got. We've got all of the emergency alerts, Alert Marin, Nixle, WIA, NOAA radios, sirens, also known as LRADs, and social media, and lastly, our media partners. What you don't see up there are community partners, all of you, right? So all of you are a resource, and it's important that we support community during an emergency. And it could be as simple as sharing a social media post, grabbing the link, taking a screenshot, sending it to your WhatsApp group, sending it to your neighborhood next door. So all of these resources are just some, but all of you are our strongest resource. I also wanted to quickly go over what access and functional needs resources are associated to Cal OEM. And within Cal OES in 2008, the Office of Access and Functional Needs was created. And this is truly a grassroots program that started with all of the nonprofit partners. They've recently created a guide to help local partners, local governments, understand what we need to do during an emergency so that we could support all of our communities and people with disabilities. And you'll notice that we say people with disabilities because they are people first, and I strongly suggest that we all learn to speak in people first language. They are not only disabled, they are a person with a disability. And even such a simple phrase, such a format of a sentence truly makes the person not solely feel as a disabled person. And so what we will do in an emergency is we'll definitely have an ASL interpreter during a press conference. You'll see during press conferences, during emergencies, there's a little box on the left where you can see somebody interpreting. This is equitable communications. So again, this is multi-layered, not just languages, not just people with disabilities, but more. And it's truly complex, and what we really need from all of you is your support in sharing all of the information ahead of, preparedness, during, and post-disaster for recovery. So just to conclude, I'd love to take this an opportunity to promote our social media accounts where we include all of the information. You can scan the QR codes for all three. You'll see that I put the little bird and the X because that's truly confusing for everybody still right now. But if anyone wants to reach out to me, please, I'll be here all day. Approach and ask any questions. This is, again, something that's growing, and we're all learning together, and I welcome all of the community perspectives from members of the community to our nonprofits and all. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Woody Baker Cohn. I've been with the Office of Emergency Management about 10 years. So some of you may have seen me. Some of you may have heard my voice in the middle of the night telling you to get out now. Apologies for that. But really, that's kind of what we're here to talk about, right? Understanding Marin's alerts. And I know that can be a little confusing. Alerting is it's a mix of kind of sociology, technology, and all at the worst moment, right? So we've been talking to you about how we communicate with you, the residents, and the visitors to Marin. The most critical communication we do are the alerts, so alert Marin. That's when we tell you you need to shelter in place, maybe evacuate, maybe get prepared to evacuate, the most critical things. Just show of hands, who's signed up for Alert Marin? All right, that is awesome. And that wasn't intended to be public shaming, but it looks like we've got a great crop of folks here. And I really appreciate that. It's anybody who isn't, just go to alertmarin.org and you can sign up. If you're not sure if you're signed up or you're not sure you've got the latest cell phone in there, just sign up a second time. The system is smart enough, it won't call you twice on the same number. It'll figure that out for you. I ran into somebody who, I forget if it was the spring or the fall, but she registers for Alert Marin and changes her smoke detector batteries, which you can't do with smoke detectors anymore, but she obviously had some older ones. So please do make sure you're registered for Alert Marin. And it's really best if each individual signs up for Alert Marin, not each household or each couple. That way you make sure you get alerted distinctly and it doesn't get canceled out because I got alerted at home and my wife was at work and she didn't get it because I acknowledged it. So just each person registering for Alert Marin is really what you would be the best practice for that. We've done some changes in that, and we're continuing to do some changes to simplify the alerting. I know this has been a little bit confusing between different platforms and things like that, so more on that to come. But really, through alertmarin.org is where you'll sign up, and Alert Marin is the mechanism to focus on. We will probably have some laptops out in the lobby afterwards if you want to sign up there, and we can help you with that. If you do have any difficulty signing up, just call our office. The phone number will be, I think, on one of the later slides, or come find one of us at the end, and more than happy to help you do that. It's a nice thing about a county the size of Marin. We can really do that kind of thing quite easily. Lower acuity messages might come to you through other platforms like Nixle, and I won't go too deep into Nixle. But another place you can go to find out what's going on is our emergency portal, which it's, let me get out of presentation mode there. Yep, stand by. This never happens, right? Okay, now I'm going to try to type while looking over my shoulder, so bear with me. So this is the county's emergency portal, which is just simply emergency.marincounty.org. And while we'll always send you out an alert for something that is critical, like an evacuation, or if the evacuation changes, expands, or you're allowed to go back in, we'll send fresh alerts for that. The incremental updates, we won't send out an alert each time because that will start bothering people. It'll distract them from evacuating. So you can get the incremental updates by just going to this website, and normally that would be up here in the top banner. There's a bunch of other stuff on here. Let me just show you. If you scroll down, there's also a map. This is really like trying to rub your stomach and pat your head at the same time. So this is the current map. And it's a quiet day in Marin, fortunately, right? But we've got a couple of controlled burns, or I guess maybe one controlled burn that's going on in Point Reyes. Some of you may have gotten a message just a few minutes ago from our PIO about that. But this is if there was an evacuation going on. This would show you the area being evacuated, where to go if we'd set up a shelter, things like that. So just a good reference for calm days and also for moments of crisis. There's feeds on here for things like, traffic alerts. There's a couple of do not enter road closure things there that actually come from Waze. And then I'm going to try to show you what would happen during evacuation. I'm going to turn something on that shows evacuation. We would have done this for you if there was something going on that required it. I'm also mildly dyslexic, so this really is a challenge. If I don't get it in a second. Hallelujah. No pressure, right? All right, there we go. So these are zone haven evacuation zones. So we would have this turned on by default if we were in a high fire danger period like a red flag warning, or certainly if there was any fire going on. But this would show you what areas were under evacuation and things like that. So that's our emergency portal. Let's see, try to get back to the slides. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. Who thinks I'm going to do this right the first time? Oh, anything's possible, huh? So that's really showing the emergency portal, and another way how we communicate with you. And we're, as you've heard a couple of times, we're really committed to making sure we're communicating with the whole community, critical alerts, non-critical things, things like that. So we're enhancing things to make it easier for those that have that aren't native English speakers, things like that, all across the board, as well as people that aren't technologically connected. So you'll be hearing more on that. And I think at this point, we've got a little time for Q&A specifically on alerts. And also we've got a panel coming at the end. Yes. Yeah, and this is something we've been struggling with. We've got two different systems that are, just because the vendors are selling their services, some of the naming and whatnot gets confusing. We're trying to consolidate that down to make it much simpler. But there are kind of two types of things that come out. Alert Marin, which is the critical stuff, so shelter in place, evacuate, prepare to evacuate, things like that. And then things that are lower urgency, that are more of a, good to know if you're in the right place. So the controlled burn a couple minutes ago was one of them. That can come from different agencies as well. So we're really working very hard to make that simpler and really in the end to kind of erase the line between the two so that you'll be able to sign up and instead of trying to figure out what the vendor's name is, you'll be able to say, yeah, I want just the critical alerts, or I want the critical alerts and maybe things that are like major road disruptions or controlled burns, or maybe you want both of those and community events, right? So to do it in terms of what information you want, not what vendor's bringing it to you, which is kind of ridiculous, right? So this is honestly, this is something we should have thought of years ago. Stephen coming in has had a bunch of kind of his experience and also a fresh set of eyes, and this is something he's been really challenging us with that I think is going to pay great dividends. So the difference now is Nixle is lower acuity, Alert Marin is the most important, the highest urgency, but we're hoping to, we're planning to kind of erase that distinction and just tell us what kind of stuff you want to hear. Is that, yeah, sure. Yes, sir.
First of all, I want to just say how I think Marin County is working really hard on the equity issue, like having Mari and the messaging that's coming out is able to reach more people. I just want to appreciate that. I know that Alert Marin is in a work in process, but I know that the community I work with is still having issues with signing up with Alert Marin because they have to have an email, for instance, and I know now you have to create an account. So I know you're working on that, but I just want to make that aware, make you aware of that. And the second thing is like yesterday when they had the great checkout. I'm okay. I have a teacher.
I know, but we need it.
Okay. The great checkout.
Yes.
I got an alert. A lot of people in my work got an alert, but a lot of the community members didn't because they weren't signed up for like My Shake or whatever. And I know that things like Nixle and Alert Marin send out messages around the burns and the street is closed, but it would have been great if they would have got a message around that, because there was a lot of confusion.
Yeah.
The day before, there was actually an earthquake, and they got messages, and they were like, is this real, is this real? And then the day of the shakeout, they're like, nobody knew about it. So just to let you know that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. This landscape has many things like that. We're working closely. I spend a lot of time working with the region and with the state, and to some degree with FEMA, on trying to unify all this stuff. And a lot of it is, it's different organizations, different technologies with nuances and all the kind of stuff that nobody but folks in my office should have to even know exist, much less understand. And I think for quite a while, we tried to explain it, which is absurd. You don't have to know how water purification works to turn on the tap and get a drink of water. And I think we're trying to get there, but it is taking a bit of time. The signing up for Alert Marin now, while there's a little more involved in it, it also allows you to go in and check to see, that you've got the right address and that you're, the right phone numbers and things like that. There isn't really an easy way to test your alert, or hasn't been. So we believe that will help people to be able to do it, but there's a little bit of upfront there. But if anybody has trouble, just contact our office. We're happy to do it over the phone with you.
Yeah, I mean, my point was, we appreciate all the effort you're putting in. But besides language, there's also digital literacy. A lot of people just don't even know how to manage that, So maybe how do we support them in that? I don't know if there's maybe some trainings that can be done, or, some informational videos. Just a thought.
Yeah, perhaps. And we're trying to, do outreach through the CRTs, community organizations, and it's one of the reasons we're here today, right, is to talk to all of you so you can help your clients, your coworkers and whatnot register. And then also, I think I'm running a little short on time, but I'm getting the looks. If there is an evacuation notice, if you know your neighbors and you know who needs help, and there's a little bit of time, Stephen talked about this, and somebody has an extra seat in your car, you can save a car, or maybe somebody can't drive anymore, things like that. So it's really working as a community.
Woody, I just wanted to add that we'll have the email addresses for everyone that signed up today, so we can follow up by sending some instructions or offering your office contact if we want to send someone out maybe and teach a whole group or support a whole agency. So we'll follow up with everyone by email.
Yeah, excellent. And we're happy to come out and talk to organizations. All right, well, thank you. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Good morning, everyone. My question is, do you have any plans, or there's any event on the community for Spanish-speaking families to get those alerts, to get registered, or to help them so they can get those alerts?
We've been doing some of those, and I know we're going to be doing more maybe when we get to the panel. Ari, who has a better, who's driving those initiatives, can speak to that. But happy to do more, certainly.
And I'll work with Marin to see that we can, afterwards, that we can send out flyer in Spanish, information in Spanish, so people can connect with her or the right resources.
Yeah.
We'll send that out.
Okay. And then we've got a panel session at the end. I just was just sneaking in a few. All right.
All right, thank you very much, Woody. Much appreciate your expertise on this. So I do want to take a moment to move to our next speaker. Elaine Wilkinson is our countywide emergency preparedness coordinator. She's working with not only the county, but many agencies throughout the county of Marin. So I do want to introduce her as she's coming up. And while she's getting up here, I do want to let people know the email component has been taken off. There is still an option for an email, but it is no longer required. So thank you for that feedback. We definitely took that into consideration. And we'll be looking for some more feedback as everyone gets sends it over to us. So With that, I'll turn it over to Elaine Wilkinson, Emergency Preparedness Coordinator for the county. Thank you.
Thank you. So I don't do this work on my own. I would like to point out some of our amazing regional coordinators who help me with the emergency preparedness in our county. We have Miranda Miller, who works in the Ross Valley Fire Region. We have Rachel Kurtz, who's in Central Marin. I did see Manny Albano from San Rafael, but maybe he just went to get a coffee. And also, I'd like to point out an incredible community member who was responsible for creating the Ready Marin site and all the branding that we have with it, and that's Paula Doubleday. So thank you, Paula. We would not be where we are with our communications without you. So, this can be scary stuff, and we want to talk today, well, my role today is to talk to you about you being prepared, because you need to be prepared before you can take care of other people, either in your workplace or in your home or in your community. Marin County is amazing. Just think about the fabulous weather we've had this week. It's played havoc with my wardrobe. Do I go full on fall, or do I still bust out the summer dresses? It's gorgeous. We have beaches, we have great hiking trails, we have these beautiful waterfront communities. But guess what? We also have every hazard, I feel, that's known to anyone that is a potential risk in our county. Earthquakes, wildfires, flooding, power outages. If we played disaster bingo, we could say house real quick. And we've learned this week that disasters can happen any day and any time. And we only really pay attention, if we're being honest with ourselves, when a disaster happens here. Disasters seem to happen somewhere else, right? And so we think, yeah, you know, I need to be prepared, but I feel like it's going to be okay. I can just do that tomorrow or next week. Or that sounds expensive or time-consuming. But none of that is true. And so in the next few minutes, because we're here with First 5, I have 5 simple steps. You like the way that it connected that? To help you think about your own personal preparedness before you can then help others. Okay, so my colleagues have spoken to you about the importance of alerts. Guess what? Next door is not a way to be alerted for a disaster in your community. We have Alert Marin, and it's critical that people are signed up for this, because if we can't get hold of you, how do you know what's going on? You need the trusted and accurate and up-to-date information. So step 1, signing up for alerts. I saw the show of hands, and you seem like everyone in this room has already done this. So maybe your challenge this weekend is to find somebody who hasn't signed up for alert and make sure that you help them do that, okay? So that's an easy one. Step 1's easy. We're done. We've all done that one. Okay, making plans. Disasters are scary, they're chaotic, they could be at night, you don't know, it's going to be stressful. So you need to plan now so you can alleviate some of that stress. So in the moment of, you're going to feel more prepared. So making a plan is a critical component. And that's something very simple. First of all, where are you going to meet? What happens if you're at work? Where are you going to organize to meet with your partner, with your children? If you're at home and your children are at school, do you all know what each other are going to be doing? Do you all know their phone numbers? I can tell you my phone number from my childhood home several years ago, but I could not tell you my husband's cell phone number because it's in my phone, right? But if there's a power outage, I need to refer to a good old piece of paper that's got all my critical phone numbers written down. And then what about choosing somebody who is not in your community, who can be your point person? So maybe it's somebody out of state or out of county, who you train all your people to check in with. So they say, oh no, I've heard from her, she's okay, she's in the Safeway parking lot, go and meet her there. So planning for disasters is a really critical component. And also once you've done your plan, make sure you put a copy of it into your go bag, and also that you share it with your friends, your family, all those people that are included in your plan. If you take care of other people or you have people who take care of you, make sure that you're switching plans and you have their critical phone numbers, their doctor's information, all those kind of things you really need to incorporate into your plan. And lucky for everyone in this room, if you just go to readymarin.org, it's all there for you. You can print off these plans. We have them in every language. We have them in large print. We have them for caregivers. We've got great resources available for you online. Okay, so now you've made a plan. You need to have your go bag. Okay, show of hands, who has a go bag? Oh, pretty good, pretty good. I find that when I'm out in the community talking to people about go bags, once you start to mention pets, right, and children, people are like, oh, my pet needs a go bag? Oh, well, I'm going to get onto that right away, because heaven forbid my Labradoodle would not be prepared for a disaster. And that's fine. If you're going to start with that, that's fine. But everyone who has a heartbeat should have a go bag. And as one of the speakers previously said, this doesn't have to be expensive. You have everything that you need already in your home. It's an old pair of sneakers. It's the old clothing that you're not wearing right now. You don't have to go out and spend any money on this. We don't even care what your bag looks like. It could be a plastic bag from Walgreens. Who cares? As long as you've got something with your supplies in that's going to help you get through the next couple of days, that's the most important thing. Your go bag is about you, about what you need. Think about your medication. Think about if you wear glasses. For me, I wear contact lenses. I would be lost without contact lens solution. I wouldn't be able to find the front door. So it's really personal to you. And it's something that is fun. You can do this with your children, with your family. Think about everyone in your household. Think about going to work. If you were stuck at work, do you have a go bag in the trunk of your car or in your locker, in your workspace? This is something, again, you can do maybe this weekend. Doesn't have to be complicated or expensive. Okay, I know that my friends from FireSafe Marin and MWPA are going to talk about evacuation, so I'm going to skip over those slides. Okay, then we've got the go bag, and the go bag is ready by your exit point. Don't have it tucked up on the shelf where you can't reach it. It needs to be where you're going to be exiting your property. And then you need to have a stay box. Imagine if on Wednesday that 4.1 earthquake in the Sacramento area was a little bit closer to us, and maybe it didn't start with a 4, maybe it was a 6.5 or a 7. You would be trapped in your home potentially, and that's why you need a stay box. And a stay box should help you get through 5 to 7 days if you're in your home. So you think about flashlights, you think about water, you think about food. How are you going to get through those critical first few days, maybe before help arrives, or you can get outside of your neighborhood? So again, do not have this box stashed in the basement where, next to the Christmas decorations or something, or up on a high shelf. This needs to be somewhere that you can easily access. And it's something that you can add to over time. Next time you're grocery shopping and there's a great deal, buy one, get one free, put the one free in your stay box. Stephen spoke about community, and step 5 in our 5 simple steps is about connections. One of my old fire chiefs always said to me, Elaine, firefighters and police officers will save a lot of lives in their careers, but none more so than neighbors who help neighbors in the time of a disaster. Creating community connections brings positive outcomes. Now, I'm not saying you have to like your neighbors, right? But get to know them. Find out who has the generator. So when there's a power outage, go and charge your phone at their house. If you're being asked to evacuate, we know we want to have as few cars as possible on our roads. So who's the neighbor who maybe could take that seat in your car? Who's going to need a little bit more help getting out of their home? We want to find these connections now and build community now So we're not doing it the day of. We have the time now, and time is a privilege in our preparedness journey. So please use it wisely and get to know your neighbors. Again, you don't have to like them. So really, just to sum up, keep it simple. You don't have to do this all in one day. You can set goals for yourself that maybe one day every week for the next 5 weeks, you're going to do something to be better prepared. Practice your evacuation plans. Check your go bags, especially if you have children. They tend to grow. So when you think about the clothing, the shoes, the toys, the books that they might want in a go bag, you're going to be wanting to review that, and you can include them as part of that process. Listen for information from trusted resources. And remember that we're fortunate to live in a county that has people dedicated to this work who are here for you. So please stay in touch with us, reach out for us, and we're doing this together, and we can just be better prepared for when disaster does strike in our county. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Elaine. One quick story before we bring up the next speakers. The 4.1 that happened on Wednesday just so happened to be a very timely earthquake, even though I don't believe many people felt it here in Marin County. We host at the Office of Emergency Management, we host a monthly meeting, and it starts at 9:30. And everyone's phone started going off, and you start seeing people starting to get under their desk and just kind of waiting. And I go, man, there's no way I could have planned that better, because our meeting starts right at 9:30. And everyone thinks that I had the authority to do something. I go, no, that's a Berkeley thing. But yeah, to Elaine's point, making sure that if that event happens here, there's probably a lot of people that were just doing their daily lives, dealing with their daily chaos on 580 or whatever freeway they were on coming towards the bay. You never know where these emergencies are going to happen. So making sure that we're not only preparing at home, but connecting with our neighbors, making sure that you have that preparedness in your vehicles as well. You could be on the road. It could be something that happens at no notice. It could happen, I'm not superstitious, but making sure that you can get under these desks as well, or these tables as well, because we never know what's going to happen. So thank you to Elaine and the information that she's provided for us. I do want to introduce our next speakers. From the Marin Child Care Council and the Marin County Office of Education, I do want to introduce Kelly Lombardi and Mike Grant, who will be giving our next presentation. So please give a warm welcome for Kelsey and Mike. Excuse me.
Okay. Thank you, Stephen. Can you hear me okay? Good morning, everyone. My name is Kelsey Lombardi, and I work for Marin Child Care Council. Say that again? Okay. Logistics. Can you hear me okay? I am so excited to see my early childhood friends in the room, and then also some partners I've worked with recently in emergency preparedness. Marin Child Care Council serves 278 providers, that's center-based and family child care in Marin County, who in turn serve infants and toddlers, preschoolers, and children in after-school programs. Prior to my role with MC3, I was the Comprehensive Health Services Director, and I have over 12 years of experience supporting staff and planning for an emergency. So in early childhood, I like to think of a few essential words that start with the letter P when it comes to preparing for an emergency. All right, first, prepare. Then, plan. The first word, plan. So before a licensed childcare can even open, they are required to make a disaster plan before their first day of care. This plan includes identifying roles and responsibilities for the team in a disaster. It includes jotting down essential emergency information like where the gas shutoff is, and it also helps the team identify a relocation site with approval from where they're going to go. The next word is partner, and thank you for your patience with the handouts. Of course, we're in early childhood. We don't use PowerPoints with children, so we're good at the visuals, right? So the next word, partner. So with any early childhood plan, we are partnering with families. We need families to be involved in our plans. We need them to give us feedback. We need them to know where we are going to relocate in an emergency. We need them to keep their contact information up to date so we know how to contact them. And we need to involve them in our emergency drills and then share all these wonderful resources we're hearing about today. All right. And then in early childhood, we are experts in individualizing for each child in our care. So the next word is personalize. So any plan or preparedness process needs to personalize for each child in their care based on the age of the child, the abilities of that child, and any needs to be considered. So for example, teachers in their plans are thinking about how am I going to evacuate if I have 4 infants who do not walk yet? Or what do I do to support this child with sensory processing needs who may need a little bit of extra care when that fire alarm goes off? So personalizing is important for any plan to make sure that it goes smoothly and the children feel comfortable. The next word is practice. Early childhood providers are required to practice a drill every 6 months and ensure that they are focusing on those drills most related to their area, like fires, earthquakes, floods, or lockdown drills that are most recent to us in the last 5 years. Practicing ensures that we eliminate any surprises or glitches in our plans. For example, I was observing an earthquake drill at a center in Marin City, and they were doing everything quite well, and we were all duck and cover under our desks, and then a child walks out of the bathroom, which is fine. Thank gosh it was just a drill, and the child was just confused. But then the team reflected after that drill, and they started adding head counts to the next time they did their drills. Practice is very important. So lastly, I want to talk about the importance of emergency preparedness and practice for all of us that support children. Let's talk a moment about cognitive flexibility. Has anyone heard this term? So cognitive flexibility is the ability to change direction in response to environmental stimuli. So super important in an emergency. This skill allows us to be responsive to the children in our care. It allows us to know whether we need to stay or evacuate, how we're going to contact families and grab our go bags or our materials. So to demonstrate this, we're going to play another favorite word in early childhood that also starts with P. So I'm going to ask us all to stand up. Okay. So I'm the teacher and you are all the children. I'm going to read out an instruction and you all follow along. Does this sound okay? Touch your head. Touch your nose. Give a thumbs up. And touch your toes. Now we're going to do this the opposite. But we will break this into parts and we will practice together. All right, so let's start with the first two. So when I say touch your head, you're going to touch your nose. When I say touch your nose, you're going to touch your head. Okay, touch your head. Touch your nose. Okay, let's try the next two. When I say give a thumbs up, you're going to touch your toes. And when I say touch your toes, you're going to give a thumbs up. All right, so give a thumbs up. Such good listeners. And touch your toes. Great. Let's put this all together. Touch your nose. Touch your head. Touch your toes. Give a thumbs up. Touch your head. Touch your toes. Now you may have a seat. Round of applause. Okay. I hear laughter and smiling. That's good. So as the responsible adult for children, it's crucial and critical that we are all prepared and we practice for an emergency. So this not only helps us develop cognitive flexibility, but it also helps us be aware of our own emotions. So think of the activity we just did. When I gave you the direction and then I told you to do the opposite, how were you all feeling? Maybe some of you felt a little unsure. A little tense, yeah? Is that what I heard correctly? Tense, thank you. Maybe a little anxious or awkward. So think about in an emergency, if I were to be the teacher, if you were all the teachers like I just was. So think about the lessons we learned in this activity. I broke out the lesson into doable parts, and we practiced all together. And I reassured you that you could all do it and gave you positive feedback at the end. This helped boost our confidence and our ability to venture into the unknown, right? Like doing things the opposite way. Also, as the teacher, I remained calm in guiding you all because I had a script and a plan of what to do. In the airplane analogy that you have all heard, I'm sure, I not only put on my own oxygen mask first as the teacher, but I also made sure I had it on the entire time if I'm going to keep you all safe. Our classrooms can have 20, 24 children at a time, and then if you think about it as a site, that's a lot to think about. So teachers need their oxygen mask on. Also, practicing and preparing for an emergency is essential for us as adults, so children can better cope in a stressful circumstance, and it will help us lead them to safety. Thank you. Mike and I go way back, so I'm glad to hand this off. Way back to the COVID days.
That's right. Thank you, Kelsey. And when she talked about cognitive flexibility, what I realized when I was given the direction to touch my toes, I need to do more yoga or more stretching out. I I got one toe, but anyway, at the very beginning, Stephen talked about turning chaos or, taking a chaotic situation and addressing it and approaching it in a coordinated way. And there was a moment in time very shortly after the shelter in place was called, when COVID first came to our community, where we were in the EOC and the director of the EOC said, we have to open an emergency child care center for children of first responders because schools had been closed. And we basically, within 24 hours, it was my first experience. I think it was technically a MAC, is that right? A multi-agency coordination. But within a very short period of time, we had to create guidelines for how we could safely open an emergency child care center for emergency first responders. And we had to create protocols, and this is the first kind of pods, and certain, the leaders from each pod couldn't intermix, and we had to do a check-in, and at that time we were doing temperature checks. But then, and it happened. Within 24 hours, we had like 2 or 3 pods open, and a few days later we had 6 pods open, and that model became the model that we used to begin to open up programs for special education students, and then eventually, over time, schools began to open using that model. But it was chaotic, it was scary, nobody knew what to do. We wanted to take care of our kids and our families and our staff, but it was chaos. But with the help of the structure of the EOC and a community coming together, it really, it's a great memory in my life, and it gives me hope for our ability as a community to respond to what comes our way in a coordinated way. So that was a great, thank you for your support in that. So, I appreciate the opportunity to provide an update on the TK-12 school system. And the first 5, having had experience as a parent, goes really fast. And so when those first 5 are over or near the end of that, it's going to be the TK-12 system. So I'm going to give a little overview of how we in our schools try to help prepare our families and community. So in the big picture, we try to be MCOE. I work for the Marin County Office of Education and our superintendent, John Carroll, and what we try to do is we try to become a communications hub to our 17 school districts and private, independent, and parochial schools. There's 116 schools in Marin County with close to 40,000 students. And so we do our best to get information to those schools in the most efficient way. So how we do that communication is we have regular meetings with superintendents, with principals. We have systems of sending out information and receiving needs and information and getting those needs to the emergency first responders. And I also have the opportunity, Supervisor Rodoni's here, I have the opportunity to support schools on the Disaster Council, so I get to be involved in kind of countywide efforts to help support our general preparedness and how we can most effectively incorporate schools into that program. Anyone do the shakeout yesterday? So we had about 26 or 27,000 students and staff who registered. Hopefully every school did it, but I'm proud to say that the schools were helping lead the charge. My colleague Leslie Benjamin from the Nevada Unified School District is here, and she represents one of the bigger districts, the biggest district in our county, and serves as communications officer. So we were in touch almost every day throughout the pandemic, and thank you, Leslie, for the role that you play in helping support this. But that was by ed code, we're required to regularly to have a comprehensive school safety plan, to annually review and update that plan, and to have our board approve that plan. And that includes doing earthquake drills, doing fire drills, and to have a reunification plan. So in the event of the chaotic natural disaster, and if the students are in school, there's a need to have a plan in place to reunite students with their families. And some families won't be able to come for a period of time, so we're required to have emergency food and water and first aid supplies. And many of you who have younger kids in kindergarten, first, second, third grade, at the beginning of the year, you'll pack a little emergency bag with food and maybe a note from home, and those are things that we need to be prepared for sheltering those students for up to 72 hours by ed code. A couple other structures that we have in place is the Marin School Law Enforcement Partnership and the Marin Schools Emergency Preparedness Council. Both of those groups meet 5 times a year and do our best to address the most pressing needs in the county and how we can help prepare. A lot of the facilities directors from the districts are on the Marin Schools Emergency Preparedness Council. The partnership with Public Health, COVID, we've always had a strong partnership with Public Health. COVID really, I think, magnified and enhanced that partnership with the distribution of rapid antigen tests when they first became available, and then to support the super pods for vaccinating our educators. That was a huge effort that we learned a lot in and just strengthened our partnership. Another feature that we have with the schools, thanks to the Emergency Radio Authority, is that every district in Marin County, or almost every district, has a mirror radio. So in the event that all other communication systems go down, landlines and cell towers, internet goes down, we have the ability to communicate at the district level about, resources and needs and kind of the status of each school at the district level. And we do a monthly test of that system, and it's a strong system. It's getting stronger. We have a tower being installed for the next gen system at one of our properties in West Marin at Walker Creek Ranch. So our office, which is right across the freeway from here, serves as kind of our school's EOC. We have an emergency backup generator, and we also provide internet to all the schools in Marin County. And we also, on the Great Shakeout Day, we maintain a satellite phone, and the only person I really know who to call is Woody, because if the mirror radio towers went down, we do have a sat phone. We actually have a list of other emergency responders. So I think there's about 20 satellite phone numbers that we've gotten through Woody, and including Cal OES, that we could maintain that communication. And we test it once a year. It worked again yesterday for the Great Shakeout. This is something, knock on wood, we haven't had to deal with for a while, but the public safety power shutoffs, the ones that we did experience a few years ago, it taught us that very shortly after the power's down, we lose communications. So schools are pre-communicated with about what the plan is should the power go off in the middle of the day. The schools generally stay open unless they need power for water and sewage. But I guess my message to parents, our message to parents is, be involved in knowing what the plans are. Know in advance, go to every school has a school site council where you can be involved in helping develop the reunification plan and knowing what the plan is should the power go out. At the school site level is what you as a parent should be involved in as best you can. The other thing that we've developed with public health and updated regularly is air quality and extreme heat protocols, which are becoming more common and is a big part of what we do. Our goal is always to keep kids in school. We feel like that's the best place for them unless there's a reason that we can't open the schools. All of Marin County school employees, public school employees, are disaster services workers. So in the event of a natural disaster, we're required to stay on site until we're released by our supervisors to support the response. And so again, thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about what schools are doing and for helping us get ready as a community. We know that together we can turn chaos into a coordinated effort to support preparedness. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Kelsey and Mike. I appreciate we want to make sure that we're talking about, the youth in the room. And if you don't have, 5-year-olds or people who are a little bit younger than some of us, use this as a moment to find your neighbors and things of that nature, making sure that this information gets to them. Before we move to our next speaker, we're going to do an impromptu game. To give away maybe one or two some items. So who is here representing a nonprofit organization? All right. If you may, please rise. We're going to play a little game, and hopefully someone goes home with a fire extinguisher. All right. We'll do two winners for this one. All right. So actually, if you are representing the same nonprofit, go ahead and let one representative from your organization be part of it. We want to make this fair as possible. I saw a rock, paper, scissors. She was like, I know the winner. All right. For the people that work within your organization, Raise your hand if you have asked them to sign up for Alert Marin. Excellent. Those that did not raise your hand, please have a seat. Out of those that are still standing, Wednesday, was it yesterday, during the Great Shakeout, how many of your organizations participated in the Great Shakeout? All right, well, it's all right. It's a good competition. Excellent, excellent. All right. Going forward, how many people have stay kits for your organization? Stay kits, not go kits. Excellent, all right, challenging. Of your organizations, how many people have checked their stay kit in the last 6 months? All right, so all the other organizations, see where we're going, all right. Out of all of the organizations that are here, who has done an evacuation drill from their main location? Oh my goodness. All right. We have 4. I think, you know what? We have 5, yes, we have 4. Let's do 4. Everyone give a congratulations. All right. And we have a couple of more giveaways, so we'll come up with an impromptu game. We want to make sure that people leave. And if you have a fire extinguisher for your organization, share it with your neighbor. Figure out if there's someone that you might know that might not have the access to be able to get these fire extinguishers and/or resources. Share this information, help them, solve their chaos as much as possible. So who brought the? Thank you to Marin Child Care Council for the extinguishers. So thank you. All right, so before we move into the next portion, I do want to bring up our next 2 speakers. Mark Brown, who is the executive officer for the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, and Rich Shortle, who is works for the executive coordinator for Fire Safe Marin. We're going to bring them up for the next presentation, so give them a round of applause while they're coming on up. Thank you both for being with us.
Thanks very much. So I'm Rich, that's Mark. So we'll do this a little bit shared. So as you see up on the board, and I think you all have the postcard out there, by show of hands, don't be embarrassed, how many are confident that you would survive an evacuation if there was a wildfire? Well, that's pretty good. But for those of you who are in doubt, that's a little bit of the job of Mark and myself, to give you the information you need so that we know that you're going to be comfortable to survive. Because we know why people do not survive, and we know what it takes to survive. So with that, I'll kind of turn it over to Mark. Do you have the clicker? All right, here we go. Make sure I get this right. There we go.
And before I get going, I'll give you a little bit more about my background. And I saw him poke his head and then he went away. But Chief Weber was in here. I used to work for him, had the honor of working for him. And by the way, he's just been awarded Fire Chief of the Year for the state of California. He's an awesome leader, and our community is much more prepared for any type of disaster, in large part because of his efforts. In part of being with the fire department for 30 years, I'm going to share some of my professional experiences with you. I'm also going to share some personal experiences because my home has been evacuated twice from wildfire, and I had a wildfire burn through my neighborhood. So I'm going to share some of the personal experiences with you. One of the things MWPA has done is conducted an evacuation ingress-egress risk assessment. It's a first of its kind report. It's evaluating every roadway in our jurisdiction for its wildfire threat, how easily we can communicate cars up and down that road, how well we can communicate evacuation notifications to our residents. We're also modeling how people behave during an evacuation so that we can best learn how to teach people to evacuate safely. The way we were able to model the human behavior was by studying past evacuations. And 3 things came up with the fatalities that occur during evacuations. They all occurred during extreme fire behavior. The good thing about extreme fire behavior is that we can predict very well, days in advance, when we have extreme fire behavior. So that's part of the preparedness for you. Sign up or know when there are red flag alerts. Those are the days that you need to be more prepared. Those may be the days that you make sure your car is topped off with gas or it's fully charged. Your go bag is by the door, maybe, or even in the car. Or if you have access and functional needs, perhaps you pre-evacuate given the location where you live. The second part is there have been failures or delays in sending notifications or for them being received. There's two reasons. Some of it is process that your public safety agencies follow to get those alerts out. And the second is infrastructure failing. I can tell you that Marin County has learned from design flaws in the process. And we have redundancy built into the system, and we have people that are dedicated as their primary job to send out those alerts. Some of the delays that we've seen across the state came about because the people that were supposed to be sending an alert, that wasn't their primary job. It was a secondary job. They were too busy doing their primary job to be able to get that alert out in a prompt fashion. And then the weakness of much of our notification systems is, I think we all know, the cellular network, right? So that's why we need to have redundancies. We need to have NOAA radios. We need to have, if you can, landlines, but landlines can fail too because sometimes the switching station's batteries die. Just have redundant forms of notification. And the last is delays in departure. The delays in departure come about for a lot of reasons. We know that men tend to be the ones that stay behind the longest. So encourage those guys that think they're tough to evacuate. The other one is not necessarily being prepared, not being aware that it's a red flag alert. And so now you're going to be a little bit delayed. And I'll tell you a little personal story. And that is in 2017 when my neighborhood was evacuated because of the Nuns fire. My wife and I actually weren't home. My children were home. They were adult males, but I don't need to say anything else, right? So, but we had it planned exactly how they were going to evacuate should they need to evacuate. And this is also part of the community aspect I want to touch on. Our camera for their front door shows, first of all, we got our SoCo alert because I live in Sonoma County. We got that, and we had contact with my boys. We knew that they were getting ready to go. Then I went back and looked at our camera footage, and I see a police officer pounding on the door. And I see my sons answering the door and saying, okay, we're getting out. And then I saw my neighbor. My neighbor knew that we weren't there. So they came and made sure that my adult boys knew to evacuate. That's what community is, right? And then I watched my kids do exactly what they were told to do and evacuate. For once, they followed their parents. Next slide.
All right, so everybody, we have Mark just talked about the three things that can cause fatalities during wildfire. So how do we prepare ourselves so that we are not one of those fatalities? So we gave everybody a cheat sheet out here, so take advantage of that. Just like Elaine talked about the 5 steps for preparedness, which I think are great, by the way, everybody should follow those. So here's 5 questions. You should know the answer to all these questions in advance. How are you going to be notified? Where are you going to go? How are you going to get there? What are you going to bring with you? And who are you going to contact? So let's dig into those just a little bit more. So Woody talked a little bit about some of the learning systems. I'm going to expand on that because one of the things that Stephen likes to say about Marin is Marin has a very coordinated and redundant system of alerts. It's a lot more than just Alert Marin and Nixle, which are the best, but they're great. We also have something called the Wireless Emergency Alert System. I won't get too technical on this, but basically it's a way to send alerts to your cell phone, whether you're signed up for Alert Marin or not. So if you have a cell phone and it's in range of a certain tower, you can get that alert that's out there. Just make sure that your cell phone is signed up to accept alerts. Everybody has heard of the emergency alert system test, the EAS test that goes off on your television or radios, that kind of everybody knows about that. once again, our local Office of Emergency Management, that's a federal system, but they can use that system to send out alerts. I've actually got lots of on my TV from that. NOAA weather radios are great. If you live in an area where there's no cell phone coverage and power is out and it's a really large event, they can use that system to send an alert over that radio system, which receives all over Marin County, and it's battery backup if you have the right device there. So it's another way to get messages. Picture of a siren. Mill Valley in particular has done a great job with this, but I will caution these are outdoor alerting systems. They're not designed to wake you up in the middle of the night. You have a modern home, double pane windows, it's insulated, walls and whatnot, you're not likely to hear that. But if you're outdoors, you're going to hear them. There's other communities in Marin County that have them, and more are going to be developing those programs. And then my favorite one is the high-low siren. Everybody's heard this. It's the European, you watch a movie where the cops are chasing somebody. Europe, I can't do a very good job of it. But if we did have an alert, law enforcement will drive around the neighborhoods that are going to be evacuating, and they will blow that siren, which is really loud. And if you hear that, get up, pay attention. That means something's going on. That's a big alerting system. That likely means you need to evacuate. So we have a lot of these systems, and they'll all be put in place if we have a big emergency. And then where to go? I'll let Mark talk about this.
I'll start with a question. How many of you have watched videos of people evacuating some major fire? I figured most of you. Who has had an emotional response watching those and putting yourself in the seat of that car for that video? Right? So, the best way to be prepared is first think about it, plan it, have it in your mind how you're going to evacuate. And more than likely, the way that you evacuate is exactly the way you drive to the store. Even I know that we all live in or many of us live in one way in, one way out streets, and you're all concerned that the fire is going to be between you and the supermarket. But if you're in a one way in, one way out location, that is probably your route. And so, first one is head downhill, preferably away from the fire, but it actually may be head downhill towards the fire. However, there are ways to safely do that, and that is one of the things that we're working on. We're creating a video on how to safely evacuate during hostile fire conditions, but you need to go downhill because that's where the fire conditions moderate. The wind is less. The flame lengths are going to be decreased. If you go uphill, most firefighter fatalities occur when the firefighters go uphill away from a fire. And so think about firefighters wearing protective equipment, having our shelters that we carry on our side. If we can't survive going uphill away from the fire, it's unlikely that residents are going to survive. It's the downhill paved roads are usually the fastest way to get out of harm's way. But I am going to say something that may sound counterintuitive. Slow is fast. We want you to go from a safe place to a safe place. Drive to a spot where you know is safe. Look ahead. If it's safe to get to the next safe spot, go. If it's not, wait a little bit. If the fire activity is blocking you, it's going to die down. And then once the fire activity dies down, then you can take that next spot. Don't use fire roads. And I do not like using absolute terms. But I have never seen a fire road that I would like to see a resident on to evacuate. Fire roads, first of all, typically have a gate with a lock. People like to try to create plans for those locks to be removed from the gate, but I could tell you, any plan that is designed around getting the lock off the gate is designed to fail. Even if it's a combination lock and everybody knows the combination, it might be that the last person that came through locked the gate in such a way that that combination lock will no longer unlock that gate. Fire roads typically go uphill, not typically able to drive a regular car on it, and if they don't go uphill, They usually go between one community to the next, which takes them through gullies and canyons where the fire behavior is the greatest. Please follow the directions of the emergency responders. And then stay with friends. That's typically, I think most people, let me ask this question. Who knows if when they evacuate where they're going? Do you already have it worked out? Friends and family are probably your best bet, right? Outside of the area. So please plan on that. But also know that we have evacuation centers, and alert notifications are going to tell you where those evacuation centers are. And then our maps that we can provide, that we have provided you, if you go to FireSafe Marin and go to evacuation maps on their website, you can see evacuation maps, and we're working on what we call temporary refuge areas. Very successful tactic that was used during the campfire. Thousands of people survived because of temporary refuge areas in the campfire. The key is they're temporary. If we get you there, then we're going to get you out of there as soon as we possibly can. And the last one is shelter in place. And the shelter in place may actually be the direction that we give you. Everyone feels like they need to do something when a wildfire is threatening them. And I want you to think about sheltering in place is actually taking action. Because sometimes we may advise you to shelter in place because we need to get fire resources up to you so that we can start taking protective actions with the firefighters. If we have too many people evacuating, we can't get the fire resources up. I actually have a story where we were responding to a structure fire, and next door told everyone to evacuate. Again, next door is not your notification system. We didn't want people to evacuate that fire. One person, while they were loading up their car, ran over themselves, and then another person's TV fell out of the back of their car, and our engine company had to stop, pick up the TV, move it out of the way before they can get to the fire. So shelter in place, and the best way to make sure you'll be safe while sheltering in place is to do home hardening and defensible space around your home. And so how are you going to get there? If you have a personal vehicle, we want you to use your personal vehicle. If you have an SUV, that's even better. But what we really ask you is to take as few cars as possible. One car, or maybe even carpooling. When I look at this picture and it looks like the campfire to me, and that's either Clark Road or Durham Pence Road coming out of Paradise, I see those two RVs. You know what I think about when I see those two RVs? Thank you for threatening other people's lives because you wanted to get your RV out of there. So please consolidate if you can. Our car's safe. There's a lot of people that are so worried that they're going to die in their car because of the media. The media loves to highlight whenever there's a fatality in a car, but our research shows that very few people die in cars. And the few that do die in cars, it's because of certain circumstances. The campfire, 85 people passed away. 7 people died in cars. Probably not a statistic you would have thought. You would have thought, given the media attention, that that number was much higher. Those 7 were on an isolated dirt road, which is where we're trying to tell you not to be on. We're trying to tell you to be on the paved roads. Media is also great about showing all the burnt up vehicles on a fire. They pick the roads that have all the burnt up cars. I could tell you from personal experience, there's just as many unburnt cars, if not more, than there are burnt cars that were left behind. And the cars that did burn typically caught on fire long after the people got out of that car. And as firefighters, and believe me, the fire trucks aren't any more flame resistant than your cars. You know where the first place we go if we are in a dangerous spot? Our fire engines, which is exactly why we try to reinforce with you, stay in your cars. Public transport is probably not going to happen that well. So I would plan on having your own route. And if you don't have a car, that's where community comes in. And that's where preparedness comes in, knowing as a red flag alert, you don't have a car, perhaps you have something prearranged with your neighbors. Hey, on these red flag alert days, are you going to be available to help me to evacuate? And will the government come and get you? Probably not. 250,000 people live in Marin. 250 public safety people are on duty. We're outnumbered. The firefighters are often going to help with evacuations in extreme circumstances, but you cannot completely rely on that. You are going to have to be self-sufficient or self-sufficient as a community.
Okay, so Elaine did a good job of covering go bags. Sometimes we think of it as a go kit. I think the bag itself is the essentials, medicine, ID, and so forth that you need, but also what to wear. If it is a wildfire evacuation, you should have protective clothing, hats, glasses at least, gloves ideally, and whatnot. And then, of course, she brought up pets. Pets are number one. Nobody's going out with their pet, but the pet needs resources too. I think Elaine said if you have a heartbeat, there needs to be essentially some consideration of what you're going to do for them. But the one thing I like, the last sentence on the bottom of the page, because this comes up a lot, it's not uncommon for there to be an evacuation warning. And that means you're not having to evacuate immediately. You have time to think about it. You have time to prepare. Sometimes the warnings can last for days. Sometimes it could be a shorter period of time. And that's when people get a little bit crazy about trying to pack the whole house up in their car. We have kind of a rule of thumb. If it doesn't fit on your couch, it's not going to fit in the car. So that's a quick way to figure out what you can get in the car. You have the go kit, then you're all ready to go. And then, again, Elaine covered this pretty well. It is important to think ahead about who you're going to contact. Loved ones are going to be interested in you. It's a good idea. You need to have an emergency plan of how that's all going to work. There's lots of information on Ready Marin or the Fire Safe Marin website about how to do that. And then the last thing, and Mark talked about this, he can say a little bit more, but the first thing on the list of what causes fatalities is extreme fire behavior. Extreme fire behavior is driven by two things: very dry conditions and very windy events. We can have a wildfire almost any day of the year, but for it to be a catastrophic wildfire that's going to create the need to evacuate large areas with a lot of danger, it's only on the very few days that are red flag warning days. You want to add to that?
Yeah, one of the things I want to add is that rarely is all of Marin in a red flag alert. When we do get red flag alerts, rarely is Marin, all of it, in a red flag alert. And if you look closely at the map, you'll notice that it's very terrain driven and elevation within the slope. And it's the higher slopes that are in red flags more often than it is all the way down to the valley floors. Why is that? The exposure to the wind, which is exactly the reason why we tell everyone, please evacuate downhill.
Very good. Okay, so personal preparedness and life safety, obviously that's our first level of interest, and that's what people are most concerned about. But people do care about their homes and want to know what they can do to protect them. This is all about adaptation. If you live in Lake Tahoe, you need to adapt to living with the snow. If you live in Marin, you need to adapt to living with wildfire. Wildfires have always been here. They're always going to be here. And we encourage what we call the house out approach. So the first thing you want to do is take a look at your home or the building you live in, and then you gradually work out from there. We'll see how that works in a minute. This is the famous, I think they call it the magic home or miracle home or something like that in Lahaina. That home wasn't built specifically to resist wildfire, but in a mile all around it is nothing. Everything is burned down to nothing. That home survived because coincidentally, all the things they're going to recommend for you coming up here were all done for that home, and that's why it survived. And I'll go through this kind of quickly because there's a lot of stuff on here, and you can always follow up with questions or go to our website for more information. But basically, the first step is harden the home. And that means hardening the home is protecting it against embers. When wildfire comes, what burns down homes is very, very rarely a wall of fire coming through. It's the embers that blow in advance, and they look for vulnerabilities around the structure itself. And some of the ways to prevent that, number one is vents. Every home has some kind of venting in it because you need that to keep your attic space, your foundation free from moisture and whatnot. There are vents that are out there that are easily available. A lot of it is do-it-yourself that are designed where the screening keeps embers out, and some of the more advanced ones can keep out heat and flame. The next one is roof and gutters. You see the wooden roof there. We have very few of these left in Marin. Most homes now have what we call a Class A roof. Those are really good. If you do have a wooden roof, though, it's really time to make a replacement on that. Your gutters are very important. The gutters need to be metal. They need to be properly installed. They're showing putting a little bit of flashing in between the roof and the gutter. That's important because if something catches on fire in the gutter, what ends up happening is it gets up underneath the roof if you don't have that protection. And then obviously you got to keep the gutters clear, so screening the gutters is very important. Keep the leaves out. Next one is decks. A lot of homes in Marin have decks. I think this is honestly one of the largest vulnerabilities, and it's a little bit harder to deal with. Ideally, we would screen the bottom of the deck so nothing can get under there, but they did a good job here with gravel mulch. So keep the leaves out, gravel mulch, nothing's growing under there. That really prevents embers from falling through the deck, getting underneath, starting a fire there. Deck catches on fire, there goes your home. And then the last one, this is a much more expensive upgrade, and a lot of the newer properties in Marin have this, a double pane window. So I'm a retired deputy chief from San Francisco. I've been like 1,000 fires in San Francisco. And almost every fire I went to, because there are older buildings there, once a fire got going inside, the windows broke. Because single pane older windows break very easily. When you have double pane tempered glass, they're very resistant to heat and fire. So that's the building itself. We come out a little bit. What we like to think of is, what do you do to create a fire smart yard? And the real key to this, it's not so much about plants that you choose and whatnot, it's really about design. So when you first start on all this, you have to think of your yard in terms of zones. The closest zone we call zone 0, that's the first 5 feet around the house. That is the most important. You come out a little bit further, 5 to 30 feet or so, you're in zone 1. Go a little bit further, you're out to up to close to 100 feet, zone 2. Zone 3 is exit ways. It's not really great in this, but a lot of homes in Marin have longer driveways, so that's the third zone. And then the last one, we're getting more into the open space in hinterland, that's zone 4. But different things for each zone. So zone 0, first 5 feet, that's the most important. I've become the biggest advocate for this. I think this is the #1 thing to do. So do those vents and keep the embers out. But the first 5 feet around the home has to be relatively, I'll call it, austere. No combustible materials in there. Doesn't mean it needs to be bare earth. You can see examples on here. Nice gravel mulches, plants that are put in pots and things like that. Careful selection of the plants. But that first 5 feet, the embers come, they hit the house, and they fall down right there in the first 5 feet. So anything flammable in that area, that's what's going to catch the house on fire. So really pay attention to that. The next thing is kind of a concept of how to put together the vegetation in the yard. Spacing. Spacing is the most important thing. Horizontal spacing, so you have space between the plants. That breaks up the ability of the fire to spread. And then vertical spacing, so that the plants on the ground are not tied up in with the trees. So now we're into zone 1, 5 to 30 feet. Again, use spacing. Hardscape. Hardscape is not plants. It's gravel paths, it's stones, it's structures, it's different things out there. You start spreading things out a little bit. This is another example. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the photos. All this is on the website, but you get the idea. You create space in between the vegetation in your yard. This is what we're really trying to avoid. How many people live on a hill? So this is a real risk in Marin County, not just Marin, but there's lots of homes with vegetation below the houses. Mark talked about how fire goes uphill. This is a classic example. Even if you did a good job right on the home, if you haven't cleared that vegetation below the home, this is what you end up with. So to avoid that, the steeper the hill, the more you spread out the vegetation. Now let's go a little further out. Here's a home that survived, and you can see now we're beyond 35 feet out there, zone 2. They did a lot of clearing out there. Obviously there was a lot of fire in that area. The home is unscathed. This is an area for what we call shaded fuel breaks. Often, as you get farther from the home, you have your trees out there. Kind of looks like a park, doesn't it? The trees are limbed up, not a lot of vegetation on the ground. If fire comes through there, it's not going to ignite those trees. The fire will slow down or stop. So shaded fuel breaks are important even on your properties. And the basic idea is we're trying to avoid having brush and vegetation right under the tree. That catches on fire. The next thing you know, it's up in the limbs. Now the trees are burning. And then I'll let Mark talk a little bit. I'll go just a little bit further, and I'll come back to my plants and mulch. I'll say a little bit about plants. So when you are thinking about this, besides the spacing and whatnot, the selection of the plant, the correct sizing, where you put it, lots of maintenance, those are the elements to keep things safe. What plants are safe? Realistically, all plants can burn. So keep that in your mind. We're not saying if you buy this plant, nothing to worry about. You have to be kind of smart about where you put it, how it's maintained, how it's irrigated and whatnot. But there are some that are really bad.
So juniper, any firefighter in Marin County actually who's been here since 2003, juniper is a bad word for us. And the last firefighter from Marin County, Steve Rucker from Novato Fire, died during the Cedar Fire because of juniper. But to take it outside of that environment, juniper was planted in excess in the 70s due to being drought resistant, but it is so flammable. Underneath is mostly dead material with live material on top. It burns with massive flame lengths considering its size, and it has so many embers coming out of it. It's not even funny. The ember attack that is created by juniper is immeasurable. And I'll go back to my personal experience in my neighborhood. 2 houses burned down because of. Then we have Italian cypress. Here I am, the executive officer of the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, and my neighbor has 21 Italian cypress on his property. I still can't get him to remove them. He's actually gotten like landscaping awards because of them. But Roman candles on steroids are not even the right beginning to describe Italian cypress. And I'll go back to my neighborhood. 2.5 homes destroyed because of Italian cypress that were 75 feet from that first house they ignited. And then bamboo sounds like 10,000 firecrackers going off at once when they burn. Again, lots and lots of embers. And just impossible really to keep the dead material out from bamboo. And the horrible thing about bamboo, even if you want to be diligent and try to remove it, it's so hard to remove. So if you don't have bamboo on your property, don't be coerced into putting bamboo on your property. And then pampas grass, back to my neighborhood, my high school buddy's house burned down because of pampas grass, and guess who let that pampas grass grow back after he rebuilt? Even though I told him he shouldn't. And in privacy screens, bamboo is really popular for privacy screens. Italian cypress really popular for privacy screens, but there's so many other ways to create privacy screens that are not going to create the same type of fire environment. And Fire Safe Marin is going to be a great resource for you. And then mulch. Obviously rocks don't burn, so it was easy for us to say you can use rocks in zone 0, but mulch is also important for healthy gardens, and we want healthy gardens for a lot of reasons, right? And so we had for a long time, used anecdotal evidence, post-fire evidence of making recommendations for mulch. There's a guy by the name of Steve Quarles, lives in Mill Valley, one of the preeminent researchers in what destroys homes in wildfires. Used to work for UC Cooperative Extension, still is very active. He helped us design a scientific mulch study in partnership with Cal Poly Humboldt. So we have conducted the very first scientific research for how mulch burns, what mulch we can recommend. We've done the burns, now we're analyzing the data, and we're actually going to be able to recommend mulch to people that has the benefits for growing our gardens, but also not going to burn our houses down, because if we go to the next slide, mulch will burn houses down. And I'll give you one last personal experience. Gorilla hair. I hate gorilla hair. And that's what a lot of realtors will use to create street value or street appeal. Thank you. And a shout out to our translator. She probably knew exactly what I was saying, and she said street appeal for me when she was translating. So they'll throw gorilla hair all over the place. Well, there's this one guy who in my neighborhood who thought he was being extremely fire safe, even though he has 2 Italian cypress in front of his house, and had gorilla hair all up against his fence. Well, his fence was destroyed up to the point where firefighters had kicked in an 8-foot section so it wouldn't be a wick to his home. He just assumed it was the other side of the fence that caught his fence on fire, but it really was the gorilla hair that he had up against the fence. So he rebuilt the fence and then bought another 20, 30 yards of gorilla hair and stacked it right up against the fence. And then maintenance. Plant selection is one thing, maintaining them is the next thing, and also when you buy the plants, they're about that big. 2, 3 years later, they're about that big. And during this time of year, I'm not kidding you, 2 days a week I'm in my yard raking leaves. And just remember, where the leaves blow, the embers go. The same wind dynamics that move those leaves move the embers. So if you have an accumulation of leaves, that's a great indication of exactly where the embers are going to go. So literally this time of year, I'm raking leaves in my yard twice a week.
So almost done here. Last little thing to talk about is Firewise communities, and this really builds on the theme that Stephen brought up at the beginning of the presentation today, and that's the importance of all of us working together, working with our neighbors. Marin County has the most Firewise sites of any county in the United States. We have about 80 of them, and there's about 4 more in the hopper that are probably going to come on board pretty soon. How many of you know that you live in a Firewise site? Okay, if you're not sure, you can go to our website and you look on the map, you'll see where they are. If you're interested in forming one, give us a shout, we'll help you to do that. But this whole concept of Firewise is neighbors helping neighborhoods, providing information, finding out who might need help, and so forth, and it is really a great program. There's I think a program that is extremely complementary to that, which is also big in Marin, and Rachel and Elaine and others can speak to it, but that's the neighborhood response groups or the NRG program. Personally, I'd actually like to see them all combined at some point because I think they are very complementary, but some of you may be in an NRG neighborhood, and if you are, I encourage you to get involved with that and then maybe go Firewise at the same time. So if you're interested in either one of those programs, you can reach out to myself or Rachel Kurtz or many others. It's online, you can find out about it. But they're great programs, but it builds on neighbor helping neighbor. And then a little bit more for Mark.
And the MWPA has about a $21 million a year budget to perform the work that we're doing, but we also want to reinvest into the community to make them safer. When we're doing that through a grant program, go ahead. And after you receive an home evaluation, you're going to see some recommendations, and then we do have a grant program so that we can help reinvest in our communities. We have $5,000 for home hardening and $1,000 for defensible space. That's the great news. The next piece of great news is it's widely popular. You see where I'm going with this. For every dollar that our residents have spent, or excuse me, the MWPA has spent in our grant program, our residents have spent $6.50. So for the last 3 months, we have had $3.2 million of resident action going on, largely in part because of the grant program. That doesn't include the actions people have taken outside of the grant program. However, it's so popular, we've tapped out the reserves for this fiscal year. So stay tuned. We want you to still do the work. If you've done work, we have a 1-year grace period. So we are going to reignite the grant program July 1st of 2024. If you've done the work between July 23 and July of 24, you're eligible to sign up. We are going to retool the grant program, though, to be more focused to the actual risks that are on the property. Right now, we're treating all hazards on the property as equal risk. We're retooling the program so that we are taking care of the riskiest things first and then moving on.
Okay, with that, thank you, and I do encourage you to visit the Fire Safe Marin website for information about this. And one last thing, virtually everything that we do, videos, static ads, print materials, are all in Spanish and in English. And we have 6 or 7 people through what we call our ambassador program who are prepared to go out to give Spanish language presentations or interactions with your community. So if you're interested, please give us a shout.
All right, thank you very much, Mark and Rich. We definitely appreciate the information. All right, so before we close out, we're going to do one more opportunity to do some giveaways for our groups. So we have I think we have 2 more fire extinguishers, I believe a fan, and some smoke alarms. So do we have any people who are caregivers in an official capacity or an unofficial capacity? All right. If you may, that could be people at home, that could be you check on your neighbor. If you're providing some type of care. If so, please take a stand or raise your hand if you may. All right. Well, in that case, I think they get some smoke alarms. Thank you for taking care of others. We encourage you to take those smoke alarms if you do not need them in your own home, making sure that they can get to a space where those individuals may be able to install those smoke alarms where they sleep. A lot of people find themselves, they might start in their bedroom, but they may move to a living room or something like that. Putting that smoke alarm where they sleep is going to be very important. But if you just need to replace one, go ahead and use that. So. Thank you for taking care of others, but also making sure that they're equally as prepared as well. So it looks like we have 2 more items, 4 total items. All right. So let's go back to our nonprofit organizations. So once again, if you were representing a nonprofit organization and you have one person, please rise. Or raise your hand. Please rise. All right. So, yes, early childhood centers or schools. All right. All right. So let's start with the schools. If you represent a school, did you participate in the Great Shakeout and you got under your desk or something? All right. All right. We can. If you have the emergency.marincounty.org website saved on your phone. All right. No, looks like we have 2 people, so let's go ahead and we can do 2 more. All right. Thank you very much. So we have 2 more items. I'm going to quickly come up with questions on the fly. Looks like we have 1 more coming to you. All right. For our... we missed one? I think we have 1 more thing to give away. 2 more. All right, let's go with who we've given a lot of information today. So out of the 2, I believe both of you are going to get a prize. Yes. I just want to have a little bit of fun. We've given a lot of information today. What is the website that you can get signed up for emergency alerts from Marin County? alertmarin.org. So you can pick from the fan or the fire extinguisher. The fan. All right. And then we'll get you the fire extinguisher. So thank you very much. All right. Well, thank you. What we're going to do is we're going to have a quick closeout for today. I'm going to invite our panel up, a couple of our speakers from today. So I'm going to invite Woody Baker-Cohn, Elaine Wilkinson, Mark Brown, and just to close out today, but also provide an opportunity for questions from the audience. I know we've talked about a lot of different things today, So we want to make sure that we have an opportunity for people to ask us questions as we close out this afternoon. Additionally, there are a lot of tables outside with information. We have a lot of tables outside with information. As mentioned, we have the Ready Marin table. Our friends from the state with Listos are here as well. So if you have any questions for a specific group and you would like to get out today, get out and speak with us on the side, please let us know. But with that, I will open it up for any questions from the audience. And we're going to need, yeah. Okay, so we'll pass this mic out.
I don't mean this to sound rude, but how come you can't get your neighbors to take those trees down? Because there's so many people in the exact same situation you are. It's a threat to the area, not just the people. So we need to come up with something that will do that and also teach the places that sell those things to not sell them.
Yeah, well, what we can do is we can definitely there's a lot of things that working neighbor to neighbor, that comes into play. Those conversations are tough. We all know. So we'll definitely get someone to start working with that. So that is a good option as well.
We actually are working closely with the insurance companies, primarily through what's called the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, who's done more research on what destroys home than any organization. And they're making the recommendations to the insurance companies what should and should not be around homes for them to continue to insure. And we're actively engaged with us providing the inspections, and then that's the carrot. The stick is maintenance of insurance. So we're working with insurance industry that if people adhere to our recommendations, they can maintain their insurance and potentially get discounts.
I have a couple questions about the landscaping part. Like, is there a mulch that you recommend? And also, what if something like bamboo is in a pot? Is that different than being in the ground?
So the mulch, the research is still ongoing. However, the early aspects of it, the more organic material that's in the mulch, the less it is likely to burn. So stuff that has decomposed more is less likely to burn. Larger dimension, natural wood products as chips, not in zone 0, outside of zone 0, perform much better than anything that has an artificial dye that's built into it. Gorilla hair, evil. And then, what was your, bamboo in a pot. It's safer definitely than in a ground. And for that, I would really it's maintenance. Make sure that you're trimming the dead material out of it, but not in zone 0.
I just got a comment. I work for seniors, and most of those places where I go with seniors, they don't even know how to sign up. They don't have a cell phone. And like a few days ago that we have the alert, so I just asked some of them and they don't know, we don't know nothing. So how they can be prepared, or what we can do to help them to be prepared.
So in terms of the alerting, would they call our office and allow us to put it in? Is that something they're willing to do you think? Or I know some people don't like to give personal information, but if there are, we're certainly willing to do that. And if there's other, we'd like to work with community organizations that are working with those people. So, as you are, to help you sign them up if that works. So that's the signups, the preparedness, the neighborhood response teams and whatnot, working with them as well. So there's the alerting and then there's the other aspects.
I would say 60% of them, they not even know how to do all that because they don't know how to get into the websites or something.
So I would just say part of my role is to work with communities that you're describing. And just yesterday, I was at a senior independent living community who this is the same conversation that we just had. So I'd love to connect with you afterwards, and then we can set something up and talk some more.
I don't have a question, just a quick little elevator pitch. So I'm with Catholic Charities San Francisco, and we recently received a grant. It's the Listos California grant, which a lot of you are probably familiar with. Marcos from the Marin Cultural Center, they had the grant as well. This initiative is all about creating or promoting emergency management through materials that are accessible and inclusive. So I've just got a sampling of some resources on the table out there, and we get these resources from the state for free. So if you all wanted to partner on something, let's say you want to bring an emergency preparedness training to the communities that you work with, I think Elaine did a great example of what that training might look like. And let's say you want to give the training yourself, like you can speak it in the language that your community members understand. You know, if it's a senior center, they probably won't get my jokes, so like you can, you know, give the training to them. But give us a call, send me an email. We can get you those materials for free that you might need for the training. You can deliver the training. It can be a great partnership. So on the table out there, I've got some business cards, and yeah, let's be in partnership.
Thank you very much. If we can actually come, there's a group of people on, if we can come over here and then we'll come back.
I'll get all the way across the room.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay. So I guess my question, Stephen, I really liked your quote from Life Be Lifin'. So so I just wanted to I don't reside in Marin County, but I work in Marin County, and I just wanted to know when it comes to building community and talking to your neighbors and stuff like that. I live in a community that's basically driven and ridden by chaos. You know, your life can be in chaos, but when you're actually residing in it, it's really hard to build that trust and to build that community. So just come to work. This is like coming to work is my sanctuary, you know, you would say, but I go home because it's affordable for me, you know, where I reside, but it's ridden in chaos. So what examples, what are some ways that we can build community and build trust with people when it's basically ridden and driven by chaos?
That's a great question, and I'll take that one. When we start looking at how we are building community, community is not only important when it comes down to emergency management. Public safety as a whole is enhanced when we start building community. I know a lot of law enforcement partners are starting to change a little bit of the way that they do things because they're recognizing that, you know, the strong arm approach of being able to just forcing people to do things is not the best way. So meeting people where they are, you know, trying to figure out what is established in your communities are going to be some of the most important things, and utilizing those as catalysts for, you know, building bridges between the locations where there might not be as much connectivity. So, you know, we always encourage just going out to the local events if there are any. And there, you know, that's where we can start. And just, you know, going to your next door neighbor and just starting those conversations. You know, once we have the ability to know our neighbor, hopefully they can see that that good deed is going on, and they may be able to start slowly changing that by just connecting one at a time with each other. It is a slower process, but at the same time, in the event that we have so many people that are doing things, you have a moment where just going to your neighbor could, you know, start a trend so we don't actually find ourselves consistently living in chaos. You know, that's what we do at work sometimes as well, where there's new people that come in, and you can see that there's a moment of just uncertainty, and then we start connecting with each other. So it's going to be a long road, but it can be done just starting one person at a time and finding where those bridges already exist.
And one way to start might be getting some of the free materials out front. That gives you a reason to go next door. I have a free brochure for you, and that would be a way to start the conversation. Okay, quick question here, and then I'll come across.
I'll be very quick. First of all, the emergency alert came through to people in our household who were from outside the country, and it was very confusing. It was great that it came through, but then nobody knew where the problem was. And I'm just wondering if there's a way to be more specific and give more information in that system.
Just for clarification, the emergency alert, which one were you speaking about? Yes. So that is run by the University of California, Berkeley. That system is outside of our capacity, but we are consistently trying to work with our partner agencies so we can get some more information. A lot of people are telling people to download the app, and so people are doing that, and much like myself, they forget that the app is on their phone. So there's a lot of communication. Unfortunately, we have to build that connectivity during emergencies because that's when people are most connected to their systems. So, yes. Oh, so the wireless emergency alert, yes. And so that's the visitors that are coming along. That's why we were making sure that we're doing our best to make sure that people know of the visitors and making sure our systems are clear for those visitors as well. So thank you for that.
There you go.
Hi, my name's Susan Martinelli, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about, I had just a comment on, I work with pregnant and new moms, and so I had some ideas on just how to support that. So increasing breastfeeding rates in the community actually helps increase resiliency in the community. And the babies, so there's a lot of really good information online about infant feeding in emergencies, and most of it is related to shelters and how to support families that have young infants. And a couple things that I just think about is that for babies who are not breastfeeding, for babies who are breastfeeding, the first things that are important, or the choices, are mom's milk, breastfed, mom's milk, not breastfed, like, in a cup or something like that, or another woman's breast milk. And then the last option is formula. And for emergency kits and preparedness, if a baby is not being breastfed, liquid formula is the best option, ready to feed, because there may not be water or things to sterilize. Powdered formula is not sterile, and it causes a lot of illness in babies, especially when it's in an emergency situation. And a cup is the best thing. And so for shelters, if you are feeding a baby anything then at the breast, little disposable Dixie cups are a really good option instead of bottles, because they can be thrown away and they can help save infections.
Thanks for being here, Susan. Susan and I served on the Marin Breastfeeding Coalition, so I knew I could count on her for talking about optimal infant feeding.
Hi. Thank you so much for your presentations. This is so much needed information. I'm wondering if you can give me a concise advice, because you guys touch on evacuating, assuming that we are together as a family in a house. But in my day-to-day life, personally, my kids are in Marin County and my work and school is in Sonoma. The first thing that I think is, like, if the road is not safe, I'm gonna walk and I'm gonna get to that school one way or another. But that might also not be safe for me because I don't know what I'm gonna find along the way. So I'm wondering if you have some advice when there is an emergency or natural disaster. If we are in a different county, away from our kids, away from our pets, what do we do?
And Mike can help me on this as well. One of the things that we've identified with our evacuation ingress egress risk assessment is that, and this is so hard, sheltering in place at our schools dramatically improves the evacuation. It decreases the amount of time for residents to get out. Trying to coordinate people who are outside of the evacuation area to come into a school to evacuate is, it just compounds the evacuation problem. But as my wife told me, good luck keeping me from my children. And we get that. So we are working really hard with the Office of Education to harden schools and also create shaded fuel breaks around schools so that we know that sheltering in place for our children is literally the safer option than evacuating. But to know that it's only a temporary thing. We're not talking days. We're talking hours, and then we have a coordinated reunification process. That really is the solution.
Can I just add something as well? Thanks, Claudia, for a great question. including your children when they're old enough to understand in planning for an emergency, to take away some of the fear, when you feel that they're old enough to comprehend what it could be like. And I know that when MC3 did the great conference a few weeks ago, we talked about children having items of comfort with them. So maybe it's a photo of the family, or it's a stuffy that's in their school bag in the event of. Doesn't have to be anything big, but it may just offer comfort during that time when you're still separated from your parents. But I would just say include them as much as you can as part of this work when they're old enough.
My quick ask is related to this conversation. So we have thousands of kids in our schools between early childhood and school age. And with the great minds in the room, I think our schools need a little bit more help with the alert system to empower parents. There's some nuances in terms of an emergency. There was one example at a center where we had a gas burst a mile down the road. There was an alert that went out. It didn't say evacuate, but 3 parents showed up. And they sometimes will get the alert before we get the alert because we're busy with children. So thinking about messaging and the alert system and when to come to school, I imagine in evacuation you want not parents coming in toward the area you're evacuating, but we're trying to do our best with relocation and notifying the families where to find us, but we need some more great minds in the room to help us build that system out.
Two quick questions.
Please stand up. Do I have to push something? Okay, these are fire-related questions, and this is based on my experience. I was, for a while, affiliated with the Community Emergency Response Team, and this matter of cotton and wool. I noticed on your bag, you emphasized cotton and wool. Is that material given to the students also for their go bags?
So what we recommend is the clothes that you wear when you evacuate. Thank you. With the best material is wool, but not everybody's going to have wool. So what's important is that you have long pants, that you wear a long sleeve shirt, that you have gloves, you have a hat on, and ideally glasses or goggles. That's the perfect outfit. That way embers are not going to land on your body and burn you. We saw that in Hawaii, where most people are living in short pants and flip-flops, right? So embers burned a lot of people. So wool is better than cotton, but if you're wearing blue jeans, which are cotton, that's going to be fine for the temporary time that you're out of there. In terms of what happens in schools, I will let the school district address that, but I don't think that they have clothing for all the students there. So.
Okay, one other question. Once again, when I was in CERT, we were encouraged to back our car up into the driveway so that our car is facing the street, because in a time of emergency, that street can be just filled with traffic, and you don't want someone who's never backed up a car trying to back up a car and to try and leave the area.
I totally agree, and it makes it safer for everybody else, because if you have to back into the street, you're actually taking more time. So, excellent point.
My question is regarding the preparedness grants, wildfire grants. Do you have criteria of priority besides, like you mentioned, that the criteria of the houses that are most in risk, right? They get priority. But for example, and Kelsey is going to like this because she's a member of the Marin Child Care Commission too, family child care providers, right? They need more investments, and then they are an asset in our community that provides a very essential service. So is there any criteria of priority that considered, for example, family child care providers?
Right now, our grant program is really focused at residences rather than larger schools but if it's in a residential care facility, our grant program for this cycle, actually you had to have access and functional needs as defined by Cal OES, and having children in the building is part of that access and functional needs criteria.
Yeah, we can take a couple of more, probably 2 or 3, and then we also will be outside for one-on-one questions. Go ahead.
It is just a comment. My concern as a community member in San Rafael and knowing my neighborhood canal, and I know there's so many moms that they don't drive, they don't have a car, they just use a stroller even to go to the stores. How are we gonna evacuate all these people if we have an emergency in canal area without transportation? If the public transportation or the government is not responsible of that.
You want to start on that? So part of the Office of Emergency Management's job, we look at multiple hazards, whether it's a fire, a tsunami, flooding. Part of that allows for us to work with multiple agencies in the event that we do need to evacuate a specific area. Partnerships not only with MWPA, but a lot of other agencies. We're looking to figure out how many people have access to vehicles. We have tentative plans. We are still in the works to make sure that we can pull in resources, whether it's from Marin Transit, from some of our bus companies, in the event that we know that people do not have the means to be able to evacuate. That will be something that we're going to put in place. But when it comes down to some of the plans, as Mark was mentioning, across the entire county, we want people to be as prepared as possible to be able to evacuate themselves. In the event that we know that we can't evacuate, there's a large group of people that can't evacuate, we are aware that we'll be able to go back and try to pull resources in to help with evacuations when necessary.
And I would just add to that, for the canal neighborhood, I can work with Marin to collect information materials in Spanish and get them to, there are quite a number of nonprofits in the community, if we can get them to them and then ask them to distribute. But we did have a few other questions.
We have a Montessori preschool in the Hamilton area in Novato, and we have a required disaster emergency form that we have to post. And so we called a number of different agencies to find out where is our evacuation area, because we have to list it on the form, but no one seemed to know. So I wanted to know, who do we contact in order to be certain of where the evacuation area is?
So part of that is that the code that you were referencing requires you to have one. But typically, the code will not expressly say where to go, so we rely on the operators to find the safest place possible in those situations. So when it comes down, you might have to work with some of our partner agencies to help get some recommendations, depending on what type of emergency it is. So the local fire department, you said Novato? Yeah. So in the event that Novato Fire District comes out and does an inspection, they might be able to give a recommendation in that type of situation to say, this is a good enough distance, but everything it's somewhat subjective. We just want to make sure that people are a safe distance away from the structure, or if there's large trees, just to make sure that they can get outside of the property. All right, we'll take, Marco.
Thank you. So I'm Marco. Thank you to the gentleman for saying, from the Multicultural Center of Marin, and I've been working about 5 years on doing emergency preparedness in the canal. I want to address a couple of issues. One is about getting to people who don't get the information. So the last time I was here was for, I can't remember the name of the conference, but one of the things that came out was we have to stop siloing. Different organizations working for the same community. So the CRT, Community Response Team, has been doing that. Carlita and I from Canal Alliance have been building a community-based way of getting the information out, getting people signed up for alerts. We want to build that more. We want to create more people in the community going out, because who do they trust? Their own community members. Just one thing I want to say is that we really want to build this program, but funding is not there for it right now. So I just want to put that out there, because if we really want to get the word out, signing up for alerts, we already started that. We did Alerta Comunidad, we got like 80,000, I think it was 8,500 people signed up. So we want to continue those efforts. The next step, we want ambassadors to tell them about the go bags and the stay boxes and planning. We do have a Listos table out there too, but we want to further the work. I just want to put it in your heads. I know you all have met me and know me, but just to advocate for that community-driven work. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments. And yes, that is part of the mission, is getting not only the Office of Emergency Management out, but multiple agencies out to connect. We believe that, the best way to build this capacity is working with trusted partners, and that's the structure that we're looking to put together. So thank you for those comments. We can definitely continue the conversations with that. So one last question. All right.
Oh, great. Thanks. Yeah, I'm just wondering what OEM is doing to reach into the population of the homeless, who are obviously challenged in shelter, transportation, and communication, all three of the most important things.
So yes, we are starting to work with the Health and Human Services Department at the county. We actually have a strong partnership with them for severe weather shelters, but in other opportunities for us to continue to build that capacity. It is something that is it's a challenge. I will be very honest about that. But what we're seeking to do is trying to figure out the different ways that we can provide support. So working with not only our Health and Human Services homeless support teams, working with the cities, we want to be able to make sure that in the event that an evacuation is noted, we want to make sure that we know where those populations are, so we can ensure that we are having an equitable evacuation. The transportation component, very similar to the communities that do not have access to cars, but they live in homes. We want to make sure that the evacuation procedures are equitably designed. So it is an ongoing process. There is a lot of work to do. I can't say we're where we want to be, but it is something that is on our radar. So with that, I want to say thank you to Michelle and the First Five team and for having us. You want to say it? Yeah. First, again, Stephen Torrance with the Office of Emergency Management. I will turn it over quickly, just if there's any last comments from the panel.
I just want to say thank you for being here. Take what you've heard, pass it to a friend, pass it on to a neighbor. We have to do this together, and as I said, we'll have more success when we work together as a community and we become prepared before the event. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I'll echo all of that. And we learned a lot from COVID, and one is to really connect with the community, right? Not just that you're the best way to communicate to the community, you also know the community's needs the best. So we want to keep this as an ongoing deep dialogue. Oh, and sign up for Alert Marin.
I just want to echo I'm going to steal Chief Tyler's phrase from Novato Fire. He says, we're great at preaching to the choir. We need to find a way to expand the choir. And I think all of you are the choir, and you can help us expand it.
And on behalf of First Five Marin Children and Families Commission, which sponsors this event, and today, thank you, we were co-sponsored by the Office of Emergency Management, but we are very proud to bring you the Marin Communications Forum every month. Very different topics, sometimes very specifically about young children, and then other times more broadly about families, but we appreciate you following. You can find our next events on our Facebook page. If you just look for Marin Communications Forum, always call First Five Marin. And thank you for being here. See you next time.